Good morning. So I am back to do more streaming. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Jessica Feinberg. I am an artist and an author in Tucson, Arizona. And I haven't been streaming quite as much as I want to because I've been having really bad allergies. But I'm doing pretty good today. So even though I had really bad allergies yesterday, I prepped a whole bunch of drawings in ink that are all set to have color added, and you may notice a common theme here. These all have drinks in them of some type because I'm working on a book filled with beverage beasts. So this one's a teabag hoarding dragon, and I have all sorts of other dragons here. And I think we're going to work on this wyvern today, at least to start with, and then we'll see how much other stuff we get done. So this wyvern is a mint mojito wyvern, or a mojito wyvern just in general. I don't say mint because they usually are. So I'm going to start with the drink because I know what colors are going to go there, and they're pretty light ones. And then once I kind of have that figured out, I will work on the rest on the dragon itself. And I'm trying to decide if he should match the drink, or I don't think I want to make him too matchy, so we'll see. I'm just going to zoom this up for you guys. Whoever ends up watching this video, I know I'm starting like at 9 a.m. on a Friday, so I guess we'll see if anyone is around. Otherwise, I will be streaming into the void for whoever wants to watch it later. Though, of course, it's not 9 a.m. everywhere in the world, so I've learned we never really know who's going to stop in here on Twitch. I've had folks kind of from all over. So I'm starting out with some yellow greens and some peacock green, and I'm going to get kind of my lime wedges painted up here. And I'm intentionally not leaving their white parts. I'm actually going to do all the highlights with white ink once I have this painted up. Let's see, this is looking a little on the yellow side to me on the computer, which usually means our auto white balance is causing an issue. So let me see if I can get it a little more. I don't know if it's going to make any difference. Well, that's annoying. Well, because it looks much more green on paper. I think it's because the lighting in here is fairly yellow. So we'll see if I can kind of get it adjusted a little bit better. Because it kind of looks, I don't want it to look completely different on the screen. It's actually a lot closer. I'm trying to see it on my other monitor because this one's not always very accurate. That's close. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So I'm going to start working on my limes, then I'll work on my mint, my ice cubes, my glass, and then I will start to figure out, of course, the dragon. Is a wyvern, so he just has wings. He's like a winged serpent versus a dragon that would have more limbs. Wyverns usually don't have limbs, though actually the word wyvern historically just means dragon. It's just over time it's come to mean one specific type of dragon to most people. I mean, it definitely varies based on your mythological and gaming experiences, but the book these are for is called Rare Dragons and Other Rare Beverage Beasts. And all of the creatures in it relate to beverages of some kind. Coffee, tea, in this case, a mojito, which is a lime and mint flavored drink that does have alcohol in it, usually. So I'm just working on kind of building my greens to start with. And I'll let that dry. So for the dragon itself, I do want to have green accents on it at least, but I don't think I want it to be green. It's going to be a little too matchy if I do that. So I think we might make it purple and green. I think that would be kind of cool. Let's see. And I do a couple of different kinds of streaming here on Twitch. I do sort of more planned events that have more full tutorials in them. And then I also do kind of these sorts of streams, which are just me at work. And much of what I'm painting is either voted on by Patreon subscribers, or in the case of this one, is something that will get mailed to Patreon subscriber early next month. So I have about 6 this size to do, and then a whole bunch of bigger ones as well. So, and we have a bunch of commissions on the lineup. We have a ton of commissions on the lineup for this month as well, including a really cool kitsune one. So there's going to be more magical Japanese fox painting going on. I'm excited because that commission has red maples in it. The gal who commissioned it is letting me have a lot of freedom, and I said I really want to do something with red Japanese kind of maples versus like general forest colors because I haven't gotten to paint those yet. So it's really cool when you can kind of have a job where you say, what would I really like to do? And then have fans who are willing to kind of support that. It's really neat. So yeah, I'm going to do purple, and then we're going to introduce some greens in this too. So I'm using 2 different purples. One is kind of a more blue purple, and then kind of towards its belly I'm using more of a violet color, so it's got a lot more red in it. This is all done with watercolor. I generally use Shinhan watercolors as well as Koi, and then some Daniel Smith colors very selectively because they're quite expensive. Fortunately, watercolor lasts a really long time. So get some nice bright purple going on here, and then what I'm going to do is bring some blues and greens in while it's still wet. And again, I'm not worried about leaving things like the teeth that much because I'm going to do all of that with white ink when I'm almost done. So I'm going to take some peacock green, which is on the bluer side of green, and I'm just going to put that on while the violet color I'm using is still wet, and I'll get some really neat sort of base blends. And then on top of this, we will add, once it's dry, I'll do some of the details in shadow. The cool thing is, since this is an ink drawing, I don't have to do as much in detail because it's already there in the ink. And I use waterproof inks, obviously, or they would be smudging everywhere. And I'm mainly a fan of Sharpie pens because I tend to wear out pens pretty fast. Watercolor paper is a little bit rougher, at least what I use. It's slightly rough, so it's a little rougher than if I'm just doing an ink drawing, say on cardstock or Bristol. And what that means is it will wear the pens out a little faster. So because I can do as many as 10 ink drawings a month, I tend to go through a couple of pens a month. So I like stuff I can buy and kind of in boxes. And actually right now I'm going through a bunch more. So I have a new box coming today of pens because I'm finishing up drawing in all of the books for Kickstarter backers, and they all get ink drawings. So I've been going through pens like crazy. So I go for affordable ones, and I tend to like to recommend art supplies that are on the affordable side as well. I think it'd be really cool if I go into the redder side for the eye. I think this guy could have a really cool red eye. And again, I'm going to add highlights in later. So I'm just building colors now. Wow, we got a bunch of people in watching. Hi. So I don't know if you guys are folks who've watched me before or new people, but I'm always happy to have company from wherever. And I try to do streaming every day or two. It just depends on right now on allergies and time. And I had planned to stream yesterday, but my boyfriend ended up staying home from work and we actually took him to urgent care because his allergies were so severe. So he got allergy shots and about 4 different drugs to take, some of which he can't take while he's working because he's not supposed to operate machinery. Hello. Oh, is the video not working on your end? That sucks. I was gonna say it should be working. And I work with a variety of different small brushes. I don't tend to use really big brushes unless I'm doing a really big painting. I have one commission I'm going to be kind of planning out this month and then painting over the summer that we may stream some of, and that's going to be a 20 by 30 inch. So to give you guys an idea, this is an 8 by 10 inch, so it's much bigger. So that one I'm going to be using a variety of different size brushes on and have a very detailed plan to begin with for it, because it's going to be very elaborate. I have to actually order paper that big. I don't have paper that big. So I'm just waiting for a payment of the initial deposit from the gal commissioning me. She's actually in Germany. She's really awesome. And then I get to order special paper and start planning out this giant battle scene. So I'm very excited for that because it's quite different than what I'm doing here. And as an artist, I found that I guess I'd say as an artist and a writer, doing different types of things can be really terrifying. But it's also very rewarding if you stick with it. You learn so much. Um, I've definitely done a ton of different styles of writing professionally and many different styles of art. Sometimes I do them in ink, like we have with this guy, and then add color. And other times I work more with just directly with watercolor or even digital paint. So a lot of the design things are similar, but the execution's a little bit different depending on what I'm doing. Like in this case, because I've done ink with a fair amount of detail, I don't have to do as much work with watercolor. If I had done this straight in watercolor, I would be doing a lot more of these little details with a brush. We're still gonna shade them and we're still gonna pop them out with a brush, but so as I recall the actual substance of a drink for a mojito, it doesn't really have a lot of color to it. I mean, you've got limes and things in it, but what I'm gonna do is use kind of a pale blue so we can, even though the glass really doesn't have a color because it needs something more here. And I'm gonna use pale cerulean blue, and we're also gonna use a little tiny bit of the green to kind of create some shadows for things like the ice cubes and the glass itself. And I really want to differentiate kind of, there's a line here where the liquid starts. So make sure we get kind of something going on there. And kind of the more you paint with watercolor, the more comfortable and fast you get at it. Same thing about like drawing, because I was doing mainly dragon drawings yesterday. Even though I had allergies and wasn't feeling that well, I think I watched TV for like 3 hours and knocked out. It's just I put it on in the background and then I knocked out like 5 ink drawings in that time. Whereas if it's like a commission or a different kind of animal, those sometimes take me longer, just depending on how much I've done. Like was doing a clockwork pegacorn last week, which I actually did finish. I need to scan. And it took me a really long time because it was really detailed and it was a horse body, which of course I think is more challenging. I mean, this guy doesn't even have limbs, so he's going to be really fast to do. And if anybody has questions or comments or requests for things you'd like to learn, I am super happy to help. I figure I can have company this way while I work and maybe inspire or entertain or just answer questions, or just be company. Since I know a lot of folks are still on stay-at-home orders, ours are sort of loosening here. We had a lot of non-essential businesses reopen the beginning of this week, um, and some last week, but they were only allowed to do curbside. And I think as of today, they're allowed to have people in the stores, but they have to monitor and only have a certain number of people, like a bunch of regulations that they're doing to try to keep it a gradual, safe opening so that we can make sure people are comfortable and protected, which is kind of good, I think. Why is this saying I had poor quality? Oh, no, it's okay. I don't know. So when you're using watercolor, you do kind of the lighter colors first and kind of all your base colors. And then you get to come kind of back in and do a lot of highlights and things, highlights and shadows once they're dry. Because if you add color while it's wet, you're going to get what's happening here, where I'm getting my colors to blend together, which I do want. But then when you're adding details, you do not want that to blend with the paint you already have there, so it has to be all dry. And I've been on Twitch for, I think we're coming up on a month and a half, almost 2 months. As a streamer, I was doing a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff before that, but the Twitch stuff's a little bit newer. And I actually want a little purple on the glass because the wyvern's wing is behind it and the glass is transparent, so you're going to see a little bit through there. Yay! You got your video working. Awesome. I always love when you have something that works fine for ages and then one of the operating systems doesn't update or something and you're like, what happened? The classic one for me is I'll go to use my art tablet and it'll stop working because Windows is putting an update and I have to go get a new driver for the tablet to keep it working and all that fun stuff. That happens a lot. Okay. Trying to make the eye a bit redder. Let me see if I can put this back on now and have our, there we go. It's funny, as soon as I have more colors on there, the auto white balance will work again for getting the colors correctly. But early on, for some reason, it when I have only like greens, it comes out really yellow. So I don't understand that, but it's wonderful camera software. Yay. And I have to pull the curtains while I stream, which is why I get these funny shadows, like the dramatic shadows of my hands, because there's so much sun behind me. If those, like, that's what the curtains pulled, that light. So otherwise, there would be so much glare that you probably wouldn't be able to see me at all. So we've kind of tried it with parts of the curtains open before. I don't know. We're trying to find a good medium. I used to stream kind of under the window, but then I end up filming the rest of the room. And when my boyfriend is here, I like to not have the camera pointed where it can catch him in his pajamas playing video games. I think he appreciates that. So it has dead spots, like Wi-Fi dead spots. Your work area? That's really weird. I'm all on hardwired connections, except when I'm like watching, streaming stuff to our TV. But in the office here, everything is connected by permanent Ethernet cable, so we get the highest speed possible for streaming. And I tend to go a bit darker than necessary when I'm painting some of this because I am going to want my highlights to show up, so I tend to kind of think about what I want for the shadows and then do a little more. But um, since I'm going to be adding some texture, I think we don't need to do too much because once it dries, I get to go back over it. And the cool thing about doing these little ink ones is they're pretty fast, so I'm going to get to do a couple of them on stream today. I'm very excited about that. We have a whole bunch of other ones I had kind of shown out in the beginning of the stream. We have this one is the Sophisticated Cocktail Drake. He's a drake because he has wings and limbs versus the one we're painting now, which is a wyvern because he only has wings. And then this one's a worm because he doesn't have any wings or limbs. And this is the Sipper Serpent Worm who likes to taste everyone's cocktails when they're not looking. And then I had to put something in. So I've done some pictures for the book that involve tropical drinks, but I haven't done a tiki specific one. And when I met my boyfriend, one of his favorite drinks was a zombie, and I love pina coladas and stuff. So I wanted to do this one is a VooDoo inspired tiki drink dragon who's going to have like a zombie in the cup. So I was thinking, well, zombie, I might as well do something creepy for that. So and then I have a really big one sitting here. This one is our non-alcoholic one of the day. This one is a dragon that should be sitting on top of a pile of treasure, but his treasure is tea bags that he steals from people when they're not paying attention. Some of them are in wrappers still, and some are out of them. But yeah, he's a tea bag hoarding dragon because that's not weird at all. I think I've like just gotten so used to doing weird creatures for my books. I talk about them like they're completely normal. I hope you guys are having a good Friday. Figured I'd get on here early because I know today and tomorrow, at least locally here in Tucson, we have a ton of DJs doing different streaming in the evening into the later night. And I try not to like run into my friends who are streaming, partly because I want to watch them. And also I think like out of respect, I try to kind of not overlap too much if I can avoid it. So I think tomorrow night we have like 3 DJs back to back who are all local doing different things, which is really cool. It's really nice to have that when we don't actually get to go out and listen to music. And even when we don't have quarantine, I don't always get to go out. It depends greatly on like if my boyfriend has really early work, because right now he's getting a little like 7 a.m. shifts, which means we're up at like 5:30 in the morning to make breakfast and get our critters fed and everything before he takes off. I try to go be the good girlfriend and make tea or coffee, whichever one he wants, before he has to rush out the door because we're both kind of groggy. So sometimes if that's the case, then we can't be up too late the night before. But he has also been having weekends off, which is really nice. So he's just got to get through today, and then he gets to spend the weekend drugged up on allergy meds, like prescription stuff. They gave him a different antibiotic than he had for his sinus infection. I think basically what happened to us is we got sick. We had 2 colds and 2 viruses since the beginning of the year, and they don't know if one of them was the virus or not. There's a very good chance that we've already had it in a mild form and gotten over it, because when they weren't sure, they had us do the 2 full weeks of quarantine, which his work was awesome and gave him the paid time off. I know not everybody has that, so we're pretty thankful for that. But then he got a sinus infection, and I've had allergies pretty much nonstop for 6 weeks. And oh, you're gonna get to do your streams on Tuesday? That's cool. I try not to hit too many other friends' streams. Like if I know, especially if there's other artists who are doing watercolor, I try. I know one of the other gals on here does watercolor and gouache, and she's usually kind of later into the afternoon or evening. So I try to be really respectful about that. But yeah, so basically our bodies got like just, and we don't even have compromised immune systems, but our bodies got like really beat up by getting sick so much. And then his work wasn't doing a lot of, until about 2 weeks ago, they weren't doing a lot of control on how many customers were allowed in the store and things like that. And he was really not comfortable because his job at the work is essential, but his job there wasn't. So he talked to his manager and they said, you know what, we can move you to something essential that avoids people. And they put him on stocking and forklifts and everything in the back of the store, which is great, except a lot of it is outside in the sun. It's 100 and some odd degrees. So we already had like our immune systems beat up. He's out there. It's windy, We're having one of the worst allergy seasons ever, and he's getting exposed to construction dust as well. So he started getting like really bad earaches, and I mean, I've had them a little bit, but nothing like his. So yeah, we took him to urgent care, and they said, yeah, you could just have like really bad allergies, and they gave him allergy shots and all sorts of fun meds. Some of them are required and some of them are optional, but he's feeling better. He has to be careful though, because some of the stuff they prescribe for him says do not drive vehicles or operate machinery like forklifts, so he can't have those while he's on shift. He's just going to take them at night. And then some of them said don't have any exposure to sun while you're taking them, and he was like, guys, this is not going to work. So but he seems a lot more like himself today, which is a relief for me. I think as whenever either of us has an issue, like if we don't know what it is, that's what always kind of scares me. so, so yeah, I was pretty sure I was just having really bad allergies because I can take stuff for them. I'm on a really mild decongestant right now, but if I take the actual allergy pills, they make my allergies go away completely, and they also make me fall asleep for about 6 hours. So I can't really take them while I'm working or painting. I try to take them kind of late afternoon, early evening, so I can get a good night's sleep. And then I usually have a lot of energy for about the first 6 to 7 hours of the day. That's when I do cooking and painting. And then I try to save more monotonous tasks if I'm going to get like feeling great. But the allergies don't usually do more than like 6 weeks, so I think I'm about halfway through. But it's really bad. We went to pick up some stuff for him at Safeway and some frozen coffee drinks yesterday, and we were in the parking lot, and I'm like looking down, there's like an inch of yellow pollen all along the curb. So definitely that's what we have. Yeah, he's some of the medication specifically said use caution while operating vehicles. So we're like, it's said to take like morning and evening, and we're like, you're just gonna skip the morning dose. You can't. It's not safe because it's forklifts and whatever. And he was already feeling a lot better. So plus, I mean, we got him yogurt and stuff, but he's got like an antibiotic and then like 4 other drugs. If he takes all of that, it will just destroy his stomach. Like it's a little extreme. I think the doctor was worried because this was like our fourth time at urgent cure in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So they figured the other antibiotics weren't helping, and he has big ears. I think they're cute. But it definitely like he gets earaches really easily, so he's just been really uncomfortable. So he said the pain was all gone this morning, which is good. But yeah, he couldn't go to work at all yesterday because he was just in so much pain. So we were just like, we called in and then immediately got him checked out, and he actually went to urgent care while I went and got all the food shopping done for the week because I don't like to leave that till Fridays because Fridays are always crazy, and Fridays during quarantine are even crazier. So I'm trying out a new recipe today. I made chilled bean salad with like rice and red peppers and beans this morning. So it smells really good. It has like a red wine dressing, like a red wine vinegar dressing on it. So I'm very excited to try it for lunch. So I've been getting a lot of stuff I can, if there's any cooking to do that really didn't have. I mean, I have a rice cooker, so I don't have to actually be over the rice while it's cooking. When we hit like 100 degrees, even inside with the AC on, I try to make sure any cooking I'm doing is done early and is stuff that can either be reheated in the microwave or just served cold because, he's out working in 100-degree weather. He doesn't want hot food for lunch. So I try to do cold salads and sandwiches and things like that for us. Just stuff that's a little more refreshing. Keep a lot of stuff around for smoothies. Our blender died last year, and I got to get a new one, and I realized I hadn't had a new blender in like 10 years. I mean, it lasted a really long time, the one I had. It was a Cuisinart one, and I think we changed to, I can't remember what brand we have now, but I read a bunch of reviews and got one, and it does so much fancy stuff. It has like a smoothie button, and it spins the blades in multiple directions, and does all these things that they blenders did not do 10 years ago. So and it's really easy to clean. So I really enjoy having that when it gets hot here. Unfortunately, I also have very effective air conditioning. It is, and you can get Trader Joe's has these like tropical smoothie things that are basically like frozen bags of banana, pineapple, and I want to say strawberry, and I just put those in with some yogurt and milk and stuff like that. You don't need to add any sweetener because the fruit will sweeten it enough. So it's a good way to kind of get something that cools you down, but also gets some of the fruit and nutrients you need. And with him, because he's on antibiotics and has been on, this is his third time on antibiotics this year. Obviously, we'll make sure he eats yogurt because it can really mess up your stomach if you don't. so, so this has been an experience. I feel bad because we both felt so crummy on and off the whole year in one way or another. And it doesn't stop me from doing art because I love doing art. And I actually feel much better today. We're kind of, I think, coming towards the end of the allergies, I hope, but I feel bad. You don't need an oven, you just wrap it in tinfoil. Actually, you can make nachos with tinfoil out in the sun, or I've known people who've done nachos by just like setting stuff on the hood of their car if the car was warm, and then but yeah, I don't mind the heat here that much because it's still not that bad. Daniel was complaining this morning that it was humid because it was like 26, 27% humidity, which was cracking me up because where I grew up, it used to be 90% humidity. Would go all the way up to like 98% humidity, which is way, way worse. And not something I ever recommend experiencing. So yeah, it does get hot here, but as long as you don't stay out in the sun for like you could stay in the shade or go inside, and it's only really hot like the middle of the day for a bit, maybe starting at like 11 to like 4, and then it starts to cool back off because Tucson doesn't retain heat the same way that Phoenix does. We don't have as much that's that's paved here, so it cools off really fast, especially in the part of town I'm in. It cools off really fast at night. You can open windows and get some fresh air. So it's not terrible. I've been way more uncomfortable summers back east in New York, and also California, San Francisco, because most of the buildings that are older, they don't have AC, or you might have a marginal window unit and a really old fan. um, I've been more uncomfortable in Flagstaff because, again, they don't have central air in most places. Whereas Tucson, we're just used to dealing with it, so we have central air for during the day, and then, yeah, it's only really hot in the sun. Um, Whereas back east, like you step outside in that humidity and you're just sticky whether or not you're in the sun. It's just uncomfortable. And I know I talk about this a lot on stream. There's so many bugs. I hate all the bugs because they bite me. I actually think bugs look really cool. I just don't like the ones that bite me. All right, so I have done most of my painting here, most of my shading. I'm going to add a little more kind of on the body of the dragon. And what I do for this is I kind of tap the brush, which looks weird. I go back and forth like this. And what it does is it creates kind of kind of the look of scales, like a three-dimensional scale texture. And he does have all these little kind of scale patterns I drew on him as well. And I'm going to kind of pop some of those out with the white ink once he's dry. Yeah, I decided when I was working on this book that the creatures would not match their drinks as far as the color went, because they'd end up being really kind of monochrome looking paintings, like one color scheme, and I didn't want that. So I opted to make them sort of complementary colors, maybe with like a little bit of the green from the drink in this one. And I think our sophisticated cocktail drink's going to be drinking a Cosmo, because I had a fan specifically ask if I was going to include cosmopolitans in the book. So I'm going to try to do that. Yeah, we're doing a lot of the more boozy dragons and creatures this month because the book doesn't have as many. We got a little sidetracked by making like tea creatures. We had peppermint tea fairies, and I'm trying to balance it out so you get some of each. Make sure I get the little scales showing behind there. So you can see how fast it is to really kind of layer all the colors in. And it may look a little muddled up here, but that's kind of intentional because when I go in a minute to my white ink, it's going to look really, really cool. But of course, now I have to make it look cooler. I'm overselling the white ink edition. There he is with his drink. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to take just a little of my cerulean blue. Cerulean's going to work. I might need to use cobalt blue. Yeah, that's better. And I'm just going to give him a little bit of a background. I don't usually like to leave my dragons just on white. I mean, when I put them in the book, they go onto a parchment background that I have to digitally add, and I have a whole system for doing that really fast now after the number of books I've done. But I think on paper they pop out a little more if you kind of add some background around them, whether it's just a color or a pattern. I've done all kinds of swirly backgrounds on dragons. I've done a couple different swirly backgrounds in streams. And I realized recently I was doing a lot of streaming of non-dragon creatures, even though I'm kind of known for dragons. So you guys are getting a lot of dragons this week. Because dragons are fun. And I always give my dragons a personality, because if you have spent time with animals, whether you're seeing them in a zoo or you have lizards or cats or dogs at home or even fish, you know that they really are not generic. They do not have generic expressions. They have a lot of personality. And so I don't like to draw generic dragons. I like to have them look, for some reason mine always look a little, well, these guys look a little sneaky, like they're up to something, but hello, they have booze. So I think that makes sense. I think it already looks a bit better. I tend to do not necessarily a clashing color, but I'll do, like, if the dragon's purple or green, I'll do maybe a blue background. If it's red, there might be either a blue or a yellow background. And you'll notice I don't worry too much about overlapping things a little bit with my paint. You just get really used to kind of controlling paint and deciding what order to paint in, so that you don't end up with a lot of weird colors getting blended together in muddy ways. Just practice, lots of practice. And the way I learned watercolor was, I think my first medium was colored pencil. I learned colored pencil and just standard drawing with regular pencil when I was very young. And then gradually I learned ink, and then got really into marker and digital paint in my late teens. And that was like when digital paint first kind of was becoming a thing in the mid to late 90s. And then I kept seeing people using watercolor, and it wasn't as common as markers. Markers were very common at like Comic Cons and anime conventions that I was at, but I've seen people do some beautiful things with watercolor, and I tried it and I wasn't good at it and I got frustrated. I tried to take a class. It was a disaster. I ended up dropping out because they were trying to teach us how to do these large abstract things. And eventually what happened was I found kind of the right class, the right instructor, the right paints, the right paper that worked for me. And then I just got really stubborn. And I did little paintings like this, just little ones, every weekend. Because I was still working a day job at that point. And I would do one little painting like this a weekend. And I did that for a year. And at the end of that year, I started getting invites to teach watercolor in places because I'd gotten good at it. But it was just like, I don't want to say I brute forced it, but I definitely, being stubborn was a huge factor. I just decided that I was not going to let it stop me, that I wasn't that good at it. I was just going to keep working at it. And now I love it because I don't have to carry a big thing of markers. If I'm going to paint at a coffee shop or a convention, I can just take a palette of paint and some water and maybe some white ink and brushes, and I'm all set, which is awesome. And it's very cost effective. So I can do commissions and illustrations for books and things like this a lot cheaper. There we go. Okay, so he's got kind of a background now. just going to use a napkin here to kind of blot it a little because it's a little too wet in places, and even my paint out actually pretty nicely. There we go. So he is now ready for the important part, the white ink. And I got asked in my last stream, so I'll go over this again. I use waterproof white inks, usually acrylic based. I usually use either FW white ink or Amsterdam white ink, but when I can get it, my favorite thing is the Deedler brand. It is what they use in Japan for comic books. And one of the reasons is the FW inks, this is not white, but here's one of them. A lot of them have these like eyedropper things, and honestly, they can get dried out, they can crack. The jars aren't as portable as something like this. And honestly, Amazon had this for like $6. It was really cheap. I was really impressed that they had the imported Japanese ink. I was like, ooh, because I was trying to get my other ink, my Amsterdam ink, because I was out of it. And obviously, I don't even know if art stores are open, but I didn't want to try that. And Amazon had it, but it was like $11 for the bottle, and I was like, that's ridiculous. I paid like $6 for that in the store. And then I saw this stuff, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I've been looking for that. So I get to use the really awesome white ink for a while. We'll see how long it lasts and if they have it again when I run out. And I sometimes have to thin it a little with water. But basically it is a way, using a very small brush, it's just giving me a hard time today, to add lots of little details and highlights. And you can try to leave those and paint around them if they're larger white areas. But for smaller ones, you kind of have two options. One is to plan where every highlight will be ahead of time and do the same process with masking fluid, which protects the white of the paper, and then paint all your watercolor and then peel the masking fluid off. I find that's more labor intensive, and you have to know exactly where you want every highlight. So I prefer to use white ink, and you want to make sure that it is a nice bright white. This is called white 2, but most of them will say titanium white. I think it's just called white 2 because it's a Japanese brand, and I don't know if they have a white 1 anywhere, but and I like it better than trying to use white watercolor or white acrylic or white gouache, because most of them you have to thin down, and then they maybe are more difficult to work with or not as bright a white, whereas white ink is already fairly thin. But because it's waterproof, you have to make sure to stop about every 3 or 4 minutes and clean your brush so none of it dries in there as it works its way up towards the roots of the brush, because it can super mess up your brush. So that's why everyone's always like, why are we stopping to wash your brush? Yeah, that's just habit. Let me see if I can go into it even a little. I don't know if this is going to be sharp enough for you guys to see. If I zoom it up this much, but there we go. I got it to sharpen up. So you guys can really see the face and what the highlights are like. So that's how I kind of add like sparks in the eyes and things like that. I find it much easier to add them afterwards, because that way you can focus when you're doing the watercolor on just getting really smooth blends and colors just the way that you want. You can also use white ink to make corrections to ink drawings or watercolor paintings, because once it's dry, you can paint over it. It won't completely match, but it is a cool way to adjust things. If you have small tweaks you realize you need to make later on. So I think it takes some of the stress out of watercolor. People get really stressed about watercolor, and I don't know why. I think it's kind of an urban legend that it's like the hardest paint, and then it's so hard to teach adults to use it. Kids don't have that fear, so they kind of jump in with both feet, and anytime I've taught kids to paint watercolor, they get it much faster because they're not afraid of doing it wrong. And the hardest thing about teaching art overall is people who are just afraid of doing it wrong. And there really isn't a way to do it wrong. It's art, it's subjective. But I think we get those fears when we're pretty young. Depending on the schools you went to or the the adults around us, the environments we were in, and sometimes that can be hard to overcome. It's definitely something I had to overcome. I overcame it kind of in my early 20s, where I just said, I'm never going to put down my art. I'm not going to be that person. I saw somebody whose art I really admired rip up a painting because they were feeling bad about themselves and their work. And I thought, if they're doing that, what hope do I ever have of being any good? And then I thought, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to have that attitude about my work, and I never have. I've always tried to be positive and kind of enjoy the process. And I think, especially with paint, it can be very relaxing. And if you are worried about doing it correctly and you're stressed, what happens is you tense your hands, and that can actually, if you're tense while you're painting, it can kind of mess stuff up more than any other way of doing it. So trying to get people to relax, I think, is the hardest thing. Yeah, the more you practice, like if you can just get in the daily habit of just doing, like, even if I'm sick and I can't do art, even when I've had like the stomach flu, I've always tried to draw at least 5 minutes a day. When I am doing this as a full time business like I do now, um, I would say there are days when I do 8 to 10 hours of drawing or painting, and there are days when I do 2 or 3 hours or an hour because I'm signing books or working events or doing other things. But I still try to do something every day. A part of it is I think I have probably a little bit of an attention deficit disorder. I was homeschooled, so that was never something that came up, but I'm a big multitasker. That's kind of how I've coped with that. So I always want to be doing a bunch of things at once. I think a lot of people would think that this is like an attention issue, but I actually kind of feel like I use it as a little bit of a superpower to get a lot done. So if I'm like, unless it's something with subtitles or whatever, if I'm like watching TV or listening to an audiobook or music, I'm almost always like drawing or painting. And even when I fall asleep at night, I actually am designing paintings in my head. I have so many ideas. I know I will never get all those paintings done in my life. So, and then I think there's such a balance too. You have to learn to let go a bit, because something is never going to come out exactly like what's in your head. It's going to grow and change. I find it like it's an organic process as you're creating it. And usually it can come out so much more amazing or so much better, and surprise you. And you'll go, where did that come from? And a lot of artists and writers will tell you we don't entirely know where everything comes from. Some of it comes from us, but we're definitely connecting to something else when we do it. And it's an awesome experience when you can get that connection, but it's very hard to get it if you are worried about doing it right, if you're stressed out, if you're worried about messing up. One of my favorite quotes is try again, fail better. So it's fine to fail as long as you fail better than the last time, that you've learned something and kind of improved. And, I can look back at like some of my early books and see things that I can do much better now because I've drawn 1,500 dragons since then, at least in the last 7 or 8 years. But people still buy those early books. Aw, well, thank you for tuning in and good luck with work. I'm sure I will see you somewhere on a stream this weekend because there's so much going on. But yeah, I don't even think there really is failing art, because the only expectations you have are those that you kind of set for yourself. Um, you really have to kind of figure that out. But I think that's true about a lot of things in life. Most of the pressures we have, yes, there are parents or other adults, teachers, whoever, that can put pressure on you. But the worst pressure is stuff that we put on ourselves. And I've noticed, particularly in relationships, people tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves for what they think they have to do or be that isn't even coming from the other person. Like, they are not asking you to do that much. You just feel like you need to. So much of it is a balance, and definitely having creative things in my life help me balance a lot of stuff out. And I notice when I get sick a lot or exhausted or depressed, it's usually because the balance is way off in my life. So I don't know what's going on this year. We just got so many colds. I think it's because we can't get our health built back up enough before we get hit with something else. But fortunately, I'm not sick now. I just have allergies because there's a huge amount of wind out there yesterday and pollen is everywhere. Yeah, I think you can just grow as a creator. That's what I don't know. I don't really think of it as a fail because oftentimes you still get beautiful pieces of art, even if you didn't make whatever your goal was to begin with. So I don't know. I just don't see it that way. And some people ask me, well, don't you lose kind of the magic of creativity when you have like work hours and processes that you use and that you have to show up and work even on days when you don't kind of feel inspired? And I actually think it doesn't. I think it increases the magic of your creativity. It's like learning a spell. Just because you know the right ingredients for a spell and the right words for a spell, does that make it not magic? Of course not. And creativity of any form, there are the same things. There are ingredients and techniques that you learn, and learning those techniques doesn't take the magic away. They're not opposites, they're things that work together and kind of help you improve. This is my favorite part where I get to add all the highlights to its skills. Woohoo! Which just makes it look nice and shiny. Look how cool that looks. I think he needs a couple more up here. So all I'm doing is just tapping the brush to do that. But I also think people develop their own sort of language, whether it's a language of words or a language of lines and brush strokes. And no matter who teaches you or who you try to emulate or who you are inspired by as an artist, that's unique for everybody. It really is. And once you start to find that and then keep letting that grow as a creator, that's like the best thing in the world. I don't even have words to say about how awesome that is. But, I never thought I would be painting hundreds of dragons a year or other creatures. Um, I never thought I would be very good at much of anything when I was a kid. I just was not great at stuff. I did a lot of writing, mainly because it was kind of a coping thing. But I didn't necessarily think I was really good at it. In fact, I didn't realize I was really good at it till I was in my mid 20s and I started getting offered jobs editing, editing comic books and adapting them and proofreading for other writers. And I realized that, like, because I was homeschooled, I didn't have a high school degree, or a high school diploma or whatnot. So I took the GED here in Arizona way back when and found out that I was in like the 90, I don't know, 97th percentile for vocabulary and writing skills, which really surprised me because it's a cliche to say, hey, if you want to be a good writer, read a lot. But I read constantly growing up, and I think being exposed to many different styles of writing, I don't really have a different thought process for like day to day life than for writing. I have the same voice. It's why people, if they talk to me online and then see me on a camera or talk to me in person, they say, well, you're exactly the same. I don't really have different personalities. Some people do. Some people have like a writing voice that's completely different from who they are in day to day life, but I've just never been that way. I'm just me. I'm really bad at being anything else. So I've had to kind of find what works uh, to make me like myself and my voice in creating things. And it has not always been easy, but overall, it's been a very rewarding and awesome experience. Okay, so I'm going to need to add a little more, I think, shadow on the mint. I don't think it's shaded enough, but the limes need their highlights here for sure. This is why I painted them completely green, so I could just do this, because that's the fastest, easiest way to make it look like citrus fruit. And you have to just match the angle of those areas. I'm also going to add a little bit of a line in white at the top where this is where the kind of the line of the beverage is. We'll add some highlights down the side. So I think other than touching up some of the mint with some shadows. Maybe some of these ice cubes here need a little outline, but it's getting there. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go with the flow with what works for you. Hi, Cat. Cat just woke up from her nap. I was letting her be in here because she was sleeping. But I might have to kick her out, which is good because I can let this dry. You ready to go out next? She's my oldest kitty. But yeah, I think you can say go with the flow, but at the same time, you have to also be willing to challenge yourself. You can't just draw like the things you're comfortable with. It's why you see a lot of, especially younger kids at conventions, they'll show me art where they have drawn a beautiful face on a character, but they have made sure to cut the character off at the waist and maybe have them standing with their hands behind their back. It's really common. And there was one gal who came to see me at a convention last year. It was really cool. And she said, "Do you remember that like 5 or 6 years ago when I was..." Oh, all right, cat. 1 second. You're getting removed. Nope. Cat removal time. Come on. Good girl. All right. Out. I didn't have the heart to boot her earlier because she was asleep. All right. So yeah, I had one gal. She said, you told me 5 years ago that I need to stop hiding hands, and she must have been like 10 when I told her this, and she was in her mid to late teens when I saw her again last year, and she showed me an entire sketchbook of hands and how beautiful she was drawing hands on her characters and everything. Then, and she said, "You told me to practice this," so I practiced it almost every day, which I thought was really cool. And then I was like, "Wow, someone listened to me. That's kind of terrifying, but awesome at the same time." Okay, so now what I want to do is add a little more shading. Use my favorite shadow color here, which is called Moon Glow. You can actually buy it that way from Daniel Smith, or you can mix it yourself. It's basically a blue, purple, and black mixture that I like it better than black because shadows are not just black in real life. They usually have blues or purples in them. They're more vibrant. But yeah, I don't know if I love that people listen to me or that I find it terrifying, but at least it was a positive thing in that case. uh, I think some part of me still feels like a 15-year-old kid who gets made fun of for drawing things. So I think there's some part of you that always feels that way if that's happened to you growing up, which isn't a bad thing. It means you can connect to people who have those insecurities and help them get past them if you're teaching ever or talking at a convention. But it always takes me by surprise when someone was like, "Well, I listened to you." I'm like, "Why would anyone? Nobody listens to me." And they do now, but they didn't when I was younger. I was kind of the quietest voice in my family and in my circle of friends growing up. Uh, but I'm certainly not quiet now. I remember after I moved to Tucson, a friend was visiting his brother here. It was of somebody I knew when I was 15 or 16, and we kind of stayed in touch online. And so we were like, "Hey, cool, we can hang out." And I was showing him some of our sites in Tucson, and I was driving because I live here, and he'd flown out. So I we got in my car, and I had the radio cranked like 100%, like it was all the way up, or a CD or something. And he's just like, "That's so weird. I picture you never listening to loud music." And I was like, that's odd because in my teen years, that's how I coped. When as soon as I learned to drive, I would find excuses to go places so I could just listen to music as loudly as possible in the car. Um, but everybody thought I was like this quiet kid for so long. I think finding my voice in art and writing definitely helped me with finding my voice in person, whether it's on Twitch or at a convention or just being like a social person in the world. Uh, I used to be terrified to talk to people, and showing them art and talking about art definitely helped me get past that. Uh, so that's kind of my vehicle to that. I still get really awkward if I have to do some sort of event that I am not used to doing. So my boyfriend was laughing at me because I'll go do like Festival of Books with 150,000 people, and I'm talking to probably 3,000 people in a weekend, no problem. But then we go to like a wedding of someone in his family, and I'm like really freaking out. Like, I don't know what to do at a wedding. I don't know how to talk to people. This is like, what do I talk to people about? Because I'm not talking about movies or comics or art or those things. So it's pretty funny. I think in my comfort zone, I'm really, really good. But outside that, I still get moments where I'm like, I'm a lot better now though. And actually, the quarantine has helped me because it did get me over kind of fears of being on camera and talking to random people on the internet verbally. Because in writing, you have a little more of a pause. You have a little more time to think than you do when you're on camera. But I think I do pretty good now. I don't think people mind if I occasionally misspeak myself or I'm a total dork because a lot of us are. I think everybody has at least a little bit of dork in them. All the best people do anyway. Okay, I think this guy's looking pretty good. I was trying to see if I needed to maybe put a little more. I've been adding a little more of like the more vibrant violety color in here to kind of punch it up. Sometimes when I see a piece, I'll be like, I really got to punch that up a little more. It's not enough bright color or contrast or something. So I'm going to punch up a little bit of our colors on him because they weren't quite bright enough. But I think he's pretty good now. I don't think you'd want to try to take this drink away from him either. I don't think he would put up with that. Yeah, when you're talking about like both detaching and connecting and different types of events and things, I think it's ridiculous that we have a few cultural stereotypes, especially here in America, that really bug me. This "are you an extrovert or an introvert" thing is dumb because everybody is extroverted and introverted in some way. You might be slightly more inclined to one or the other, but most people, it depends on the type of event or situation, and it depends on the type of time in their life and what they're going through. And I learned as a creator that we all have times, like especially for creative people, of expansion and contraction. So when we need to expand, we are much more extroverted, we're much more social, and we want to get a lot of input in from the world. But then as a creator, when you're trying to process that input and create, sometimes you become more introverted. You go inside yourself, and it's actually perfectly normal to be both. It's like this ridiculous idea of like if you're a cat person or a dog person. That's just silly. I just love animals. Can't I love all of them? And then have cats that I don't like or dogs that I don't like. Like I think it's like saying, "Oh, you should only love children who are either male or female. You can't love both." And it's like, well, you're going to meet kids you like of both genders. That's just silly. Why would we say that about cats and dogs? But we get those stereotypes, and then I think people get these labels like, "Oh, I'm an introvert and I can't ever be social. I'm never going to be comfortable." And that's not how that works. A lot of times, if you're not comfortable, you just have to find the right ways to talk to people and the right things within yourself that you're comfortable with. Um, and yeah, I get days where I'm like, especially if we've done a big convention, like after we've done like a Comic Con or a book festival, I become very introverted. It's like, no, we can order takeout. I'm not going anywhere. I might go to the coffee shop and get something to go or sit quietly at a table by myself, but I am not going to interact with a lot of people because I've been doing that for several days. And the 4 day ones, I don't really do them anymore because they were too hard for me. I find it just like really exhausting to do 4 days of talking to people for 9 hours a day. That's ridiculous. I honestly, I've known creators who go to conventions every single weekend and just do it over and over again, and that's just, for my personally, that's too much. I need my alone time. I need my pajamas and coffee in the morning and relaxing a little bit before I deal with people. And I know when I am a good or a bad person to be around. And I don't want people to be around me if I'm going to be like, I don't want to be social right now. So, yeah, if I have like an off day, then I won't usually stream. Though usually right now it's an off day with like if my allergies are really bad or those sorts of things. But family stuff's always weird. I think that's a whole separate situation. And I think at least some of you guys know, like, I don't really interact with my family very much. I do interact with my boyfriend's family, but mine's kind of for a variety of social and or legal reasons, not really in my life very much. And that's okay. It's a little weird this time of year because it's like Mother's Day, Father's Day. It's actually both of my parents' birthdays, their anniversary, my brother's birthday. I don't talk to any of them at all, so it's really strange. Everyone's just like, "Happy Mother's Day," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't do that." But we do something nice for my boyfriend's mom, so we usually call her or something. I think we're gonna work on this guy next because I've just been very excited about him. I had a lot of fun drawing him. Our little tropical tiki voodoo dragon. But yeah, I think the most self conscious people actually usually aren't as socially awkward as they think. I don't know. I think there's like a in between, but most people who've told me they worry about being socially awkward, I actually don't think are socially awkward at all. And I haven't had issues. Oh, my boyfriend's all excited. No appliance truck to unload today. That means he actually gets his lunch break on time at 11. Yay, which is in like 45 minutes. So we have time to do this painting. Zoom this out a little bit. I have to switch to it, like the camera controls are in a separate program from my streaming program. So that's why it's like, takes me a sec to zoom stuff out. I have to change which which one I'm on. But yeah, there, now we can see the whole thing. You get along with people and still not want to be around them every day. I thought for a long time I never ever ever wanted to live with people again. I was pretty firm on that. I was like, no. I have tried living with a boyfriend. I tried all sorts of things. I was like, nope, never. And then my boyfriend that I have now, we were just together all the time anyway. It just became inconvenient when he had to go home. And after that had gone on for about 6 months, I think we've been friends for like 3 months, and then we dated for almost six, and then he was already kind of keeping some stuff here, and I was like, just move in. This is dumb. But I think the reason that we can make that work is because we have very similar personalities as far as liking our own space. So even if we're both at home, we won't necessarily be doing things together. Like if he'll have the weekend off this weekend, but we won't be doing things together the whole time. There'll be a good amount of time when he's probably doing something in Grand Theft Auto or Kingdom Under Fire or one of the other games he's playing, and I will be in a different room or just on my own computer. And we keep each other company, but we definitely give each other space, and that just happened to be something that worked for me. And I think that works most of the time. We've actually been pretty grumpy with each other the last couple of months on and off because when we're sick and cranky and it's hot, we just, haven't been feeling all that well. So we're trying really hard not to get grumpy with each other. But I think a lot of people get grumpy when they don't feel well. So I don't really think that's that bad because most of the time we're not like that. So yeah, I want to do this guy very much with kind of like a nighttime, more blue background, a much darker blue. So I'm actually kind of roughing in the background first, um, just because I sort of have a plan for it. We're going to see if it's going to work. And often because then I'm not worried about messing up details I've already painted on the rest. Though when it's in ink, again, it's easier. Um, yeah, I have this idea to do it with that, but then excited about the eyes. Yeah, he's actually okay. So maybe it looks a little weird in ink, but he's actually a dragon who's wearing a skull on his face. So this part up here is a separate piece that's going to be more white colored. That's why he's got this like big shadow around his eye. He's not like a skull dragon. He's actually wearing a skull, which is kind of a weird voodoo-esque thing that I wanted to do. So I actually really wanted him to have kind of a yellow glow around him as well. So that's gonna be a really fun one. I was like, I really want to paint this one. So yeah, I wanted him to have kind of this glow, and I wanted it to blend a little with the blue. So I'm trying to kind of work on them at the same time. I probably let the blue dry a little too much here, but I could probably still get it to blend. I just don't want it to turn into green. So, but yeah, he's like a voodoo dragon, so he can have glowy stuff. So I'm doing this part first, and then I'm gonna paint in the details of the dragon and everything. I think this will hopefully work well. We'll see. We'll see what happens. kind of my plan. Yeah, at first I was like, what would I do for a dragon with a tiki drink, or in particular like a zombie, because the tiki drink my boyfriend loves is called the zombie. And then I was like, I could do a zombie dragon. And then I was like looking up tiki and zombies and started to realize, hey, what about all the voodoo stuff? That'll be cool. So that's sort of where this came from yesterday. I was taking allergy meds at the time though, so that might have had an impact too. Uh, but yeah, I think you have to really have people who understand if you do need space, and if you live with someone, it's really important that they understand that it's not that you don't want to spend time with them, but that you need your space and they need theirs, and it's very healthy in relationships to have that. And unfortunately, there is a bit of a trend for people to think they have to spend every second with their significant other. A Mardi Gras dragon. I wasn't really thinking like Mardi Gras as much. I was thinking more because I don't really think of Mardi Gras as having that much voodoo involved. I know there's some, but I was thinking more. I don't know. I guess like swampy, firelit. Day of the Dead is not voodoo. Day of the Dead is kind of more sugar skulls and stuff. And this is more tropical because Mardi Gras doesn't usually have a lot of tiki influences, so this is kind of a voodoo tiki hybrid, I guess. Because I do have tiki carvings that have skulls and stuff, which is what I was going for with the tiki mug on here. So I'm going kind of a little more in the tropical area. So I wasn't necessarily making this specifically a zombie drink. I mean, I'm going to paint it the color of a zombie, which is kind of a reddish pink color. But I was kind of thinking for generally for like tiki drinks because I've done some things like pina coladas for creatures like pina colada cuddles and stuff that we've done on other streams, but I didn't put them in like a tiki cup, tiki mug, I guess, tiki glass. I don't know. I mean, they were usually made out of like mug like material, but um, I thought that would be really cool to include one. Yeah, it's kind of like a tropical goth voodoo drink. And I don't actually like zombie drinks because it depends who makes them. Sometimes they have grenadine or something else in them that I just don't love the flavor of, but I love plenty of other tropical drinks. So I like pina coladas and oh gosh, I don't know the names of some of the other ones because some of the bars just have their own things. They call them the Surly Wench here in Tucson has one that is called Elvis Lives. That is a lime coconut drink that I just love. It's very refreshing. But I wanted to kind of do something a little different for this. A lot of times I don't do like a really dark background or a full background, and I really wanted this guy to kind of have that creepy, glowy magic feel. Which in that case, I feel like the background then has to be dark enough that then you can have yellows and golds around him that will kind of glow. The trick is not to mix these too much because we don't want it to look like mud. That's very important. Did not look like mud or get too green. And yeah, I gave him little like pauldrons or shoulder pads with skulls. The cool part about like doing these books is that this one is a little less scientific than some of the others I've done. There are creatures from specific folklore and mythology in here, but then there's also plenty that we're just kind of making up, like this guy. Um, but a lot of my books, I'm quite serious with the folklore and kind of the science references, and this one, um, it's on the sillier side for sure. I've done a couple of them that are silly. My Desert Dragons book for sure is on the sillier side. Had a lot of more nonsensy writing. So this one's kind of in the vein of that because I mean it's the beverage book, so it's going to kind of match. But this one is the style of the book itself because I've already started doing layout. We actually have about once these guys are done, we'll be almost ready. We almost have enough for 100 pages, which is crazy. I don't know how we got there that fast. Uh, but but the layout is a little more like it was a lore book owned by somebody who spilled stuff all over it. So it has like a lot of stains. I've actually tried to match the stains to the beverages on those pages somewhat. And the information about the creatures is in these sort of little note card looking things that look kind of handwritten. So I was kind of going for a little more of a scrapbook or an old lore book that had been passed down look for this one, which is really really fun. So what happens after I paint them is I scan them, and then I have a technique I use in Photoshop that will get rid of any white background, and basically I can put it over a parchment background if I want to. I have brushes for adding all the stains and stuff like that. So it's a whole process to do the actual layout, and then there's the writing. This doesn't have as long writing as some of my other field guides. Like I said, these are like little note cards that tell you about the creatures. But for the ones that tie into folklore, like the Absinthe Fairy, which I've actually already done. That was one of the ones I previewed on Patreon for my subscribers. Because they get a lot of $5 and higher subscribers get preview pages from the books every month, and then they get a digital copy of the book for free when it comes out, which is pretty cool. There we go. Glowy background completed. And I'll probably put some sparkles and things around him at some point too. That's pretty easy for me to do. I do want to bring a little bit of the background down onto this back wing, even though I'm going to paint him with a color, because this wing is in shadow and it's behind the front wing. So I really want to make sure that they're kind of separate there. Now I'm trying to decide. I was thinking he could either be a green dragon or a red dragon. I think he should be maybe a green dragon. But then I was gonna then these little like feather like tufts will be red around the skulls. I think if we do that. That song. Daniel played that song on loop the other night when we were sleeping, thinking it would annoy me, and I actually like that song, so I'm fine with that. It's called nicknamed the Pina Colada song, but that's actually not what the song is called. The actual name of the song. I'm trying to remember what it's called because it has a name. And I have mixed feelings. So I love listening to the song, singing along with the song, but the actual story in the song is really weird to me. Like I don't know if that really happened to you, how you would feel about it, because the basically the Pina Colada song is it's sung by a guy. It's to be a guy who he sees an ad in the kind of the classifieds in the newspaper. And the ad is the thing like he's saying is that the ad says, "I like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain," and they're all the lyrics are a little different. So he writes a similar thing in response, and he ends up really connecting with this woman in the classifieds, but he has a significant other. He has a maybe not a wife, but a girlfriend who they've been together a long time. It's very obvious from the song, and he decides he's going to leave her and run off with this woman he's never met. I mean, the internet didn't exist at that time, so it was all in the newspaper. And when he goes to meet her, it is his girlfriend. Like they just weren't communicating at all, and they actually had all these things about each other that they never knew that they discover. And they end up laughing over it and kind of, being really happy. And I'm thinking, if that really happened to you, could you ever trust the other person again? Because they were each willing to leave each other for somebody else. It's kind of weird. uh, a very, very weird sort of story. I mean, it's kind of cute in a non-personal sense, but when you really think about it, you're like, I don't know if I would be okay with that, if I would trust somebody if that happened. So it's a really funny song if you listen to the story. And I guess I'm one of the people who actually does listen to lyrics. I don't always remember them. Sometimes I'll look them up, but sometimes if the lyrics are really clear, I'll just listen to them and be aware of what the story is. And sometimes people will like a song and they don't. Daniel tends to listen to stuff and not really ever pay attention to the lyrics or learn the lyrics or learn them wrong, as we all know from the song that he refers to as the Chicken Cherry Cola song, which is not what that song is called or what the lyrics are. But sometimes if I tell him about what a song is about and he listens to it again, he ends up liking a song he didn't like before. There's a song by Train that they were always playing at his work, and it came on the car, and he was like, this song again. And I was like, this song is a great song. And he's like, no, it's not. I'm like, this is a song about a guy who his girlfriend dumps him, and instead of telling everyone that they broke up, he finds 100 different ways to say she died, and they're ridiculous. Like, she gets run over by a purple scion in one part of it. Like, the lyrics are completely silly. And then after that, he started really liking the song because he realized that it was just this like completely joyful way of saying my girlfriend's dead, rather than actually telling someone that you broke up. It's just like a dumb song. It's actually one of 3 or 4 songs that are about that. There's like a whole series of them by different musicians. I think there's one that was part of the Idle Hands soundtrack, because I have that soundtrack, and it's just called "My Girlfriend's Dead," and it all rhymes, but she's not dead. He just doesn't want to tell anyone that they broke up. So, so yeah, sometimes the lyrics can make something better, can make you enjoy it more, and sometimes it can make you go, "Whoa, that's what this song is about." It's awkward. I really like songs that sound really happy, but when you listen to the lyrics, are actually about something weird or serious. Or there's a Rusted Roots song called "The Martyr" that is like one of the happiest rhythms I've ever heard, but the song is about being a martyr. So that makes no sense, but also makes it kind of awesome. You're quoting Happy Gilmore. I wonder how bad you gotta feel if you gotta tell someone that your significant other's dead versus having dumped you. I feel like that's so awkward. Okay, so I think you're gonna see a little bit of green in here. It's still gonna be darker, but I think you're gonna see some green because that's his actual like skin showing through. um, there we go. Like, he's already coming along. And I'm gonna definitely introduce like a much darker green. I'm just kind of doing this the lighter part, and then I'm gonna take this nice darker green here and add all of our shadows. And he looks kind of boring right now, but once we add orange and red feathery tufts to him, he's gonna look awesome. I hope. Then I'm gonna use more of my awesome favorite shadowy color Moonglow to shade the part up here. This part is the skull that he's wearing. I'm going to shade all my skulls kind of with that. So I'll get these guys shaded. Which Bloodhound Gang song is that? Because I like the Bloodhound Gang. I'm trying to think of which one that is. I'm a big fan of the Discovery Channel song. As inappropriate as it is, it's super, super clever. They have very clever lyrics in most of their music. So there we go. So yeah, the horns are actually part of the skull the skull helm that he's wearing. They're not part of the dragon. I don't know if he has horns. Maybe little ones that are like hidden under there. And I think it's great. Even all this time, I mean, I've done well over 1,000 dragons, probably close to 2,000 dragons realistically, and I've never happened to do a VooDoo one like this. So I think it's really fun to still get excited about trying new stuff and experimenting as an artist. Never understood artists who like get famous for doing one thing and that's the only thing they do. I have to kind of be able to try new things and kind of be refreshed by it, or just like if I get bored with what I'm doing, other people are going to get bored with it too. I think you put some of what you feel into what you paint, so if it's you being bored, then the picture is probably going to invoke that somewhat as well. Oh yeah. Well, you know who else does songs that are very like upbeat in rhythm, but sometimes about other things. The Offspring. I was a huge fan of the Offspring. I still listen to some of their newer stuff, but I was a huge fan of the Offspring in like the '90s and early 2000s. Um, and they have like some really happy songs about things that are pretty dark or violent or scary, but they're such a unique sound. Yeah, I'm Daniel laughs because my like road trip thing, if I start to get sleepy in the car, is to put on an Offspring album, which makes me, drive way too fast, but it keeps me awake. So yeah, Conspiracy of One, and I think it's mostly Conspiracy of One kind of lives in my car. I still have the CD, and it stays in there for when I need to stay awake. Yeah, I definitely like music in different ways. There's some music that's just fun to dance to, and I don't really care if the lyrics are clever or not. But the musicians I admire the most for their writing are those who were able to write things that are very similar to like good poets. They kind of turn things in a way that you might not normally see them, make you think about them differently. Obviously, like my absolute favorite musicians for that are Simon and Garfunkel. They were some of the first lyric songs I fell in love with and are absolutely amazing. Yeah, I love that song too. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I don't mind if like I'm listening to Lady Gaga or Britney Spears and it's not that creative if I can dance to it. That said, one of my favorite Britney Spears songs is a bonus track on one of her albums that never got radio play. You never hear it played anywhere. That is lyrically incredibly clever, and it's called Phonography. And it is basically an incredibly suggestive song using all puns related to phones and cell phones. And Star 69 is in there, and Hands Free is mentioned. Like she has more range than you would expect. It's just she was doing a lot of fluffy pop songs, but somehow that one snuck onto an album. And I think her later stuff had like more clever lyrics, but I'd say like the Offspring and Simon and Garfunkel are my two favorites for really, really clever lyrics. And then the Bloodhound Gang Discovery Channel song, because that has so many amazing puns that somehow lyrically work when you sing it, and it's awesome. I used to sing that song from heart. Also a big fan of Salt and Peppa of like the 90s, 80s and 90s, but definitely the 90s album because like Shoop was really big when I was probably like 15. And they're still, I think, the only female rappers that sound that way. They're so different and iconic, which was kind of a big deal at that time. There really weren't any other female rappers out there when I was growing up, so that was pretty neat to have that kind of as an inspiration. Yeah, right now he's blending in kind of a lot with my background, but he will not be when I'm done. I'm just trying to watch the time because we are coming up on lunchtime. Ask my boyfriend which thing he wants with our bean salad for lunch. We have options for wraps, quesadillas, or nachos. The eye is gonna be really cool. I'm actually gonna paint that next before we stop. So, but yeah, I feel like music and movies. I like them in different ways. Things that I might watch over and over again, or listen over and over again, or dance to for one reason. It might not be the things where I think the lyrics are the most thought provoking. I'm asking him, which thing do you want to eat? So like I don't know. I think it's weird when someone will tell me, "Oh, I don't like that movie because the dialogue is cheesy," and I'm like, "But it's a fun movie. Not everything you have to like for the same reasons or in the same way." Um, so I like quite a big variety of things. So I'm painting his eye yellow, and then I'm going to be adding red to it. And I'm going to start adding just so we can test out the colors. I'm going to start adding some red here, and I'll probably try to come back after lunch. I've been streaming for well, like an hour and a half, but I might come back after lunch and try to finish this guy at least because I'm having a really good time with him. See, once that red is in there, he is going to look awesome. It's going to really make him kind of stand out. So he's this kind of cute little green dragon. He's just all all dolled up in a skull, and the Disturbed. Ooh. I don't know if I have a most influenced band though. I mean, if I had to pick just one that most influenced me, oh man, that's hard. I think it would be a tie. I think probably Simon and Garfunkel would win by a little more because I heard them when I was very young. And definitely they are some of the best writers in any genre of writing that exists. Like they're just absolutely amazing. But it almost be a three-way tie because I think, oh, don't alarm me, phone. I think when I was young that Ace of Base had a huge impact on me as well. And then also the Proclaimers, who I believe were somewhat influenced by Simon and Garfunkel. So yeah, they're like there's like three really different bands, and then I also love plenty of classical stuff. Um, while I am not the biggest fan of the movie Jurassic Park, I absolutely love the soundtrack for Jurassic Park, and I've gotten to hear that live when I was younger by the Boston Pops who recorded it for the soundtrack, and actually as conducted by John Williams. It was really cool to get to hear that. And I am a big fan of a lot of violin music. There's several Paganini violin concertos. So yeah, I kind of like a little bit of everything except for polka. I have never encountered any polka music I like, and I don't like any super country. If it's kind of country rock or country like country folk, I can sometimes like it. Like there's a song that's really popular right now called, I think it's just called Burning Man, that I could just listen to over and over again. It is fairly country, but I just love what the song is about. It's very inspirational. It's kind of about how everybody is a mix of things. So you might be a little bit of holy water, but you might also be a burning man. And I really like the lyrics in that one. So more recent lyric things I love. I also love not the newest one, but I think the album before that. It's one of the newer, really from like 5 years ago, Fall Out Boy albums. I really love the lyrics on that as well. I think they are very clever. And there's actually a Proclaimers song. Most people know them for the I Would Walk 500 Miles song, or some of their other stuff on that same album, which I think is on Sunshine on Leith. They're a Scottish group. They're awesome. They're actually not together, and I don't think they still do stuff, but they're two identical twin brothers, the Proclaimers from Scotland, and I'm pretty sure. But they have a song from one of their later albums, which I don't remember which album it is, but it's a very ridiculously silly, comical love song about trying to tell someone how you feel about them, but just not finding the right words because you're all awkward. Um, and the chorus of the song is there's a better word out there somewhere spinning around in the air, but he can't find it. So um, he keeps trying to tell her he loves her, and it's just so ridiculous. Um, I think at one point he says that he would be the pasture if she were the mayor. Like they're things that should be romantic, but they're just a little weird. Like he doesn't have the right way to tell her, and I thought that was great for like an awkward love song because not everyone has perfect words, and I thought that was really neat. But yeah, I just generally love all the Proclaimers songs. There's one on one of their early albums that is about how they were trying to teach in the school system there, they were trying to teach people to speak more correct English and basically lose the Scottish dialect and the Scottish accent to the burr, the rolled R. And the song is called Throw the R Away. and they're trying to teach them how not to say that, and that was their kind of protest song for like their heritage to keep that. Um, and I think the opening lyrics are something like, "I can say Saskatchewan without starting to stutter." Um, yeah, it's really clever, but also had a very like interesting political meaning behind it. No time for proper English. Well, I think it's good that when I was in anthropology class, we talked a lot about globalization, and with the internet, we are becoming very much one global community. And in some ways, that's really good because it destroys a lot of boundaries. People learn about other cultures now. Way more than 10 years ago, we have music from all over the world. Before YouTube, there is no way a song like Gundam Style would have hit the top 40 in the US. Like, that would not have happened. Um, so, in some ways, it's really good. But in other ways, you get um, people trying to teach everyone to talk the same way, to lose the accents, to basically communicate in a way that is most appealing to get you work anywhere in the world. And you're losing things like verbal storytelling in Ireland, or the R's, the birds and the R's and the Scottish accent in Scotland. And so there is definitely a double side to it, and there are people who kind of work to preserve those things, which is good. Um, Obviously, I love the internet because I get to talk to people all over the world, and they get to be a part of me making ridiculous things like this. So I'm still waiting to hear back which thing he wants to have with our bean salad, which I hope is good. It's like, oh, weird. It's a cold bean salad with like rice and red peppers and corn. So I've made like chilled pasta salads before. I've never done like a rice and bean salad that's chilled before, but the recipe looked really good. So I've had it chilling since like 7:30 this morning. Pretty much after he went to work, I just made it right away so that it could, because it's got like a red wine vinegar dressing. So I figure the more it can kind of marinate, they say to let it marinate for a bit before you eat it. So it was really easy to make though. So I'm excited about that. It has two kinds of beans in it. And I guess people do all kinds of variations on it, but it's pretty easy to get the stuff for and pretty easy to make. But I figure he's going to want more than just like bean salad for lunch. Though some people, I guess, do eat it as a main course. So I was going to make either we get stuff for quesadillas or nachos or wraps that can go kind of with it. So yeah, he's actually wearing like an arm cuff here. I don't know if that's very apparent, which is why I'm not painting that part. That's going to end up being his arm cuff. And I think for the tiki mug here, I'm going to do kind of a brownish color, but I'm going to definitely put some orange in there too, because some tiki mugs are pretty bright. I want it to have some kind of color. Probably put the orange in and then paint the brown over it. That would be smarter. He's coming along already. I'm really happy. This is a little bit of a different dragon, but I love that the fact that the books that I'm doing let me experiment so much, and that my friends, my fans, my boyfriend, they all kind of encourage me to do weird stuff. I feel like the weirder I go with my art and my books, and the more fun I have with it, the more people tend to like them. So yeah, I learned all the useless kind of languages. I learned things like reading ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, which is not super useful, but a lot of the Egyptian and Aztec and even voodoo cultures, they make appearances in my art, so I do kind of get to use that stuff a little bit. Oh, I like the wings and the eyes the most. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with the wings, and I'm definitely gonna. I feel like they're getting a little blended in. There's too much green, so once I kind of get more of this painted in, I'm gonna end up tweaking those wings a bit. Decided to do orange and yellow a little bit on here. I think that'll look cool. The trick is not to paint things that are wet next to other things that are wet if you don't want them to blend together. So like I can't paint like this cherry until this orange area has dried. And then this is going to be sort of like a bone mask thing. I mean, they carve them. I did Google like tiki mugs for ideas, and I Googled kind of voodoo staffs for ideas. You should sleep. Have you been skipping in your sleep again? Yeah, I do a lot of different types of cooking, and when I was in college, I actually got exposed to. I think I mentioned this in another stream. I lived in a residence club with 70 to 75 residents, but only 3 or 4 of us were Americans. So we probably had like 30 different countries, and everybody used one big communal kitchen. So we shared a lot of different foods and stuff. It was pretty cool. And that's one of the reasons I love Tucson too, because we have a lot of different options for cuisine here. Tons of different types of restaurants, and there's some I haven't tried yet. I know we have like a Peruvian restaurant, like with food from Peru. I have not tried that yet. I'm very curious about that. And we have one that's South African food. I hope they all stay in business. I mentioned this the other day, but my favorite Chinese restaurant went out of business. So, which is, I guess, a lot of Chinese restaurants are having a hard time right now. Uh, Partly just because they tend to be more month to month in their operations. And then also because some people are being stupid and thinking that you should boycott Chinese food, as if a Chinese restaurant in Tucson, Arizona, or wherever you are in America or somewhere like has anything to do with a virus that originated in actual China. They don't even use the same cooking techniques in a lot of Chinese American restaurants as they use in China, so it's very silly. But I don't know. People are kind of nuts right now, which is a little bit scary. Yeah, he's coming along so well. Okay, I think I am going to take my lunch break, and I will try to come back this afternoon and work on him and maybe work on another painting. We'll see. Um, I don't want to shut my cats out for the entire day. They're going to get mad at me. But hey, we got this entire one done. And most of this one painted in like under 2 hours. So that's pretty cool. So thank you guys for hanging out and watching. If you don't already follow me, you can do so to be notified when I get back on the stream. I also have it posted on my Discord channel, on my Discord server when I am streaming. I have a website and all that stuff. It's all listed on my Twitch. My website is reddragons.com. You can find a lot of my art for sale. You can join my Patreon and actually get to vote on and support what I do. Your sleep schedule is weird. We already know that, Gina. Your sleep schedule is all the way all over the place. So, payway. Okay. Anyway, have a good day. Get some sleep. Stay happy. Stay healthy. Stay positive. Make sure to dance lots. Wash your hands, and hang in there. And hopefully, all of us are starting to get back to normal, at least just a little bit. Thank you for hanging out with me. I will try to be back this afternoon. If not, I will be back tomorrow for more art. We'll just see how sleepy I am after lunch. And I do have other stuff I have to work on as well, but I hopefully get to do some more painting, and it'll either be today or tomorrow. So thank you guys for hanging out, and have a good day.